Section 10.8, trigonometric ratios. We're going to define the trig ratios and then solve right triangles using the trig ratios. First thing we need to do is get our calculator. And we're going to have to look at the mode that the calculator is in, because when you purchase these TI-84 calculators, they come in radians automatically. Well, today we need these in degrees. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So pull out your calculator, go to mode, this button right here. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and if you have an older model, it'll look a little different, but where you're looking at is for radian and degree. My calculator's in radians. I need it in degrees, so I'm going to arrow down. And then arrow over, but that's not enough. You actually have to select it by hitting enter. You'll see now it's bold on top of the word degree, so it's in degrees. So you've got to do that before you do 10/8's homework. Now, we're ready to go. We're going to talk about some specific labeling of the right triangle. We're going to talk about hypotenuse, where it's located. Because we just talked about hypotenuse with Pythagorean theorem, that'll be the easiest one of the three for you to find. It's across from the right angle. Now, depending on which of these two little acute angles we're looking at, you have to distinguish between opposite and adjacent. Because I've got this little A down here, that's where I want you to focus your eyes. This angle down here, angle A, if you look at that angle, this is the opposite side to angle A. It's across from the angle. The adjacent side is this side that is actually the side nearest the angle. And so depending on which angle you're looking at, that will determine how you want to label it. I do recommend on your problems when you get to your homework today is to go in and label these three sides: hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. Okay, now let's practice labeling this one. So again, your eyes are at this angle here. I'll let Jamie come up and put the labels where they belong. Correct? Correct? Very good. Thank you, Jane. Okay, I want to show you something really quick before we leave this flip chart. If I decided to look at a different angle, let's say I'm going to look at this one, I only have to move two sides. All three will not change. The hypotenuse, regardless of which little angle you're looking at, this is always the hypotenuse. But if I'm looking at this angle, these two will switch. So this would become the opposite of that angle, and this one would become adjacent to that angle. So it really matters which angle your eyes are supposed to be looking at. So always look for that label. There'll be some sort of labeling in the drawing that you need to use to see which angle you're supposed to be looking for. By the way, we never really focus on the right angle, so it's always these two acute angles that you're looking at. We're going to talk about SOHCAHTOA. Take your time writing this down. Write it down really big, capital letters. SOHCAHTOA. The first one we're going to come to is sine. That's S. Sine, by the way, you'll see that on your calculator. There's a sine button. In fact, I can show that to you really fast. Right here. All three of them are located right here: sine, cosine, and tangent. So we're going to go through their definitions here. This is always a ratio. That's what we call them, trig ratios. It's a fraction. Whatever the length of the opposite side is and the hypotenuse, you stack them up and build a fraction. It's a ratio. So whatever the sine of some angle, you go look for the opposite hypotenuse and you've got it. And so S sine O opposite H hypotenuse. This is cosine. This is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then last is tangent, opposite over adjacent. Notice tangent doesn't use hypotenuse. So later when you get to doing your homework, if you don't have the hypotenuse, you're probably going to use tangent. Probably. So make sure you know this one big word, how to say it correctly. SOHCAHTOA. If you say everything correctly, it will help you spell it out, and then you'll automatically have all your trig ratios listed out for you. So that'll be really, really important. So like when you get ready to take your chapter 10 test, probably want to write that word down as soon as you get your test so that you'll remember all your trig ratios. So do a good job in your notes of putting all that information out, because that's going to be very helpful. In fact, you might want to write it when you start your homework. Put it at the top of the paper. Okay, we're going to practice right now is using our eyes and looking for the information that is given. So what I want you to look at, first of all, is look at this triangle. They've got each side. They also have some labeling with ABC. But up here it says we're looking for the sign of A. The thing to remember is that is opposite over hypotenuse. Okay? So what we're going to go do is, first of all, locate A. That's angle A right here. So go and imagine you're like standing right here on this angle, and you're looking for the opposite side. That would be this. And then the hypotenuse never changes, and that would be the 2. So you're looking for the fraction 1 over 2. So it would be that one. Okay? We're going to practice several of these. So you get used to looking at a triangle and trying to figure out what are they wanting from this picture. Now we're going to do the tangent of B. So our eyes are going to go over here. So let's go look down here at B. You got to remember your trig ratio. This is TOA. By the way, I use this for abbreviations, opposite OPP and adjacent ABJ. So tangent, opposite over adjacent. So now, while I'm looking at angle B, the side opposite angle B will be the square root of 3. The adjacent side will be the 1. Notice we're not even doing anything with the 2 because it's the hypotenuse. This tangent doesn't have anything to do with the hypotenuse. So this is opposite over adjacent, which would be this one. It's a little bit tricky, but there is understood to be all over 1 there. So this one is the answer C. Okay. Now, what I want to do, see if you can, I'll give you just a second, figure out which angle we're looking at, and which trig ratio are we looking for. So you see this A. So I want to put a little mark there. Remember cosine is adjacent. It's the cos, C-A-H. So adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent side to this angle is the square root of 3, and hypotenuse is the 2. So we're looking for the square root of 3 all over 2. And that's this answer right here. By the way, that's not even legal. You can't leave a radical on the denominator. So you knew that one was probably wrong. Okay, now I'm going to show you what your homework looks like. I need you to understand this little M. When they give you this, they'll say find measure of angle A. So know what that little M is talking about. So in the very end of this problem, we're going to say A is 19 degrees or something like that. Okay, so make sure at the end of this problem you're stating your answer like that. All right. So if they want us to look at A, let's go put a mark up there at A so we know for our eyes to be looking there. Now look at the only 2 pieces of information they gave us. 22 and 24. Here's where you might want to go start labeling. This I always label first. This is my hypotenuse. It's the easiest to find. It's across from the right angle. This 22 is close to this angle, so it's the adjacent side. So here's how you're going to set this problem up. You're going to figure out, first of all, which trig ratio uses adjacent and hypotenuse. That would be cosine. So you would state it this way. Cosine of A would be equal to, here's where you build the fraction. And we're going to do 22 over 24. Right? But we still don't have the information we need, which is the measure of angle A. Like, what measure of angle A would give us this ratio? Here's where your calculator is going to do the rest of this for you. But you got to know what buttons to push. We are going backwards in the calculator. We're going to do an inverse function. If you'll look on your calculator, I'll show it to you in just a minute. There's right above cosine is cosine with a little -1. What it means is when you don't know your angle, but you do know your ratio, you can put it in the calculator and it'll reverse it for you and tell you what the angle is. So we're going to go to the calculator and we'll do it with you, and we're going to figure out what this equals for angle A. So look for the -1, and you all know this by now. Anything written above here, you got to go do the second button. And watch how it comes up. Looks just like the way I had it written. Now the fraction was 22 divided by 24. Close that parentheses. Hit enter. You should get this if you switch to degrees. If you haven't switched your calculator, you will get a different answer and it'll be wrong. So make sure you do that correctly. By the way, your your textbook is going to let you round this to the nearest whole number. Maybe what would you round it to?
24.
24. That's right. So we're going to say angle A equals 24 degrees. But we saw on the calculator is really 23.55. They're going to let us round that to a whole number. Okay, so a majority of your homework looks like this one. I'm going to do one more. Okay. So when we get started looking at the triangle, look what it says, and look what was given, and start figuring out which trig ratio are you really going to be working with. So find the measure of angle X. There's X. And they gave us 5 and 19. What I would do, while I'm looking at X, go label 5, go label 19, and then start thinking about which of the 3 ratios we're going to use. This 5 is way far away from that angle. So that is your opposite side. This, should never miss this one. This is your hypotenuse. And then start thinking, SOHCAHTOA, which ratio uses opposite over hypotenuse? That would be sine. Okay? So let me write it out first. So this means the sine of X would be equal to 5 over 19. But I need to go to the calculator and go in this reverse way of figuring this out. So I'm going to need to go to sine negative 1, 5 over 19, over 19. So go to second. 5 divided by 19, close it. So, Jamie, what would you round that one to?
15.
15 degrees. Good. So we would say angle X is equal to 15 degrees. So be careful with your labeling. Have SOHCAHTOA written out. Make sure you're using the correct trig ratio.